Since the pandemic, Archeology Cymru, that I work for, has been forced to undertake all its lectures online, which is a challenge. The challenge is to financially keep the organisation going and provide a service for our students, a community service, and that's exactly what we're doing. So this recording is for my students and those others listening and looking at this recording, and also whatever I'm saying now is being recorded into my computer to send to my students in the form of notes, so that's great. So anyway, the first lecture in this pandemic series is looking at Julius Caesar, the archaeology of Julius Caesar. Now, this was seemingly very easy to do, and slowly but surely I thought, actually, what we know about Julius Caesar is written extensively down in the history, but the archaeology of this man is quite elusive. We've got lots of statues. They've amazingly enough in the Netherlands created this wonderful facial reconstruction of Julius Caesar, and doesn't he look rather odd? Apparently he had a strange sidewards elongated head, if that makes any sense, but that's from reconstruction. I didn't actually know that until recent research told me. Anyway, looking at the archaeology associated with Julius Caesar, I think the best stuff that we can look towards is a massacre that actually took place in 55 BC. This massacre that took place 55 BC was actually in the Netherlands. So what I'm going to do, I think the best thing I can do is look at the information that I have from this massacre, and what we've got in the image is, in view of images here, is a map showing you where in the Netherlands this all took place. 150,000 to 200,000 people from the eastern side of the Rhine wished to see sanctuary within Julius Caesar's republic. Can't call it an empire. So the events were 55 BC, and the people on the eastern side of the Rhine were asking Julius Caesar if Julius Caesar could protect this large horde of individuals from other Germanic peoples. And Julius Caesar said, no, you're not coming over the Rhine, you're not settling on the western side of the Rhine, you can stay on the eastern side of the Rhine, that's where you're staying. Apparently that's the story we're told. But for some strange reason, what happened next was that Julius Caesar had a change of heart about these large numbers of tribespeople on the eastern side of the Rhine, 55 BC, and he said, "Why, just come over, just come over and settle in the Netherlands." And then we see that bit of the story, and then the next minute, the whole part of the history goes a bit awry. I'm trying to do this in simple terms, as his dad trying to teach me this bit. And we can see a little bit of a map in front of us, and these two maps. You've got the map of the large part of the Netherlands, and you've got the sort of inverted map. And what you can see is the black lines on the map are actually indicating the movements of these tribal peoples coming over the Rhine into the west. And then there's a little red line, 8 Roman legions intercepting these 200,000 tribes people And the history has it, written by Julius Caesar, that he massacres them all. That's a history. Julius Caesar, strangely enough, tells us that he massacred all these people. It's, you know, if you want to have a metaphor for this, it would be Adolf Hitler saying, look, we did the concentration camps. We massacred 11 to 12 million homosexuals, gypsies, Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, and so on. And him saying, this is what I did, right? The metaphor is that actually that is a metaphor for what Julius Caesar actually did in his history. The actual one of the histories that he wrote, the history of the Gallic and Belgic wars. I think this is book 4. He actually told us all about it. Now, can we actually believe this massacre actually took place? The fact of the matter is, the massacre in the archaeology did take place, because archaeologists have been finding thousands of bones, lots of bits of skull, and whole weapons, used and unused, within the landscape indicated on the map. So it's best if we actually go in here and we actually read out the translation of part of what Julius Caesar was actually doing, this massacre. And I do apologise for the way I'm actually putting this across today, because I've usually got an audience in front of me, and we didn't record the lecture last week. So, if you bear with me a minute, Julius Caesar is described at his worst. Virtually the complete eradication of people. So as I set this up, this is Julius Caesar writing now. He writes, I sent the cavalry behind to them, interjection behind the tribesmen. This is Roman military cavalry. The Roman military didn't, the ALA. There weren't a great deal of Roman cavalry, but probably a few thousand of them. And then Julius Caesar then writes, the Germans heard screams behind him, and when they saw their wives and children were slain. Now, the Germanic tribesmen, as they're sort of being herded towards a river, which is between, which is this side of the Rhine. So they're being herded towards a river, and away on the western side, the River Mouse, if I've got that right, the Mouse. It's then said that he writes that they threw down their weapons and ran headlong away from the camp. So these are German men. They see their wives, children and elderly being slaughtered, and they throw down their weapons and they run towards the river to try and get away. The onslaught of the cavalry and then 8 sets of Roman legionary detachments must have been horrific. When they had come to the point where the rivers flow together, they saw no good in further flight. So what we're talking about, the tribesmen who were left just headed into the river. The Julius Caesar's telling us this. And then Julius Caesar then writes, a large number of them were slain, and the rest fell into the river, where they died overwhelmed by anxiety, fatigue, and strength of the current. And Caesar, in his De Bello Gallic book, book 4, this is his history of the Gallic-Belgic War. He's actually telling us that he did this. He commanded 8 legions to actually massacre a whole people. So you know, in this lecture, to start off with, we're really painting Julius Caesar as being an absolute despot. So that's a bit of the archaeology that we're looking at. The other side of Julius Caesar in the archaeology is actually very scant when we look in the British context. But before we actually get there, I'd like to say about this sort of massacre in the Netherlands. The skull that you can actually see as an image, you can actually see that there's a small hole in the skull. This is believed to have been the bodkin of a pilum. And what a pilum is, you've got a bodkin, you've got a soft metal shaft, and then this is then mounted onto a large wooden shaft. And then as the pilum point inserts into a shield or your skull, the metal bends and almost as if drags you down into the ground. Well, you're going to be dead if a pilum hits you in the skull anyway, but if you're not, it's going to be quite a torturous death. They found lots of swords, and long bones, the femur, humerus, bones of children and women and men all mixed together. They've been excavating within this landscape, as we've shown on the map, since the 70s, really, for 40 odd years. So they've been gathering all this evidence together. And when you think about it, when Varus is marching the 3 legions in Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD, it's no wonder that the Germanic tribesmen wiped out, the thousands of soldiers that Varus had with him, probably in revenge to this event that Julius Caesar caused to the deaths of 200,000 tribespeople, their own kin, in the year 55 BC. So the image that you can see in front of you is actually the image of a helmet, which is known as the Canterbury helmet. Rather interesting helmet, and I've given a whole lecture on the Canterbury helmet. Found on the outskirts of Canterbury, and it looks sort of Romanish, sort of a really sort of Romanish looking military helmet from one of Julius Caesar's invasion attempts of Britain. It's sort of got the metal content of a helmet from the period. It looks very sort of Roman military, but some people argue that it's probably not Roman military helmet, but it's probably from around 50, 55, 60 BC. And it might actually be a mercenary who actually fought alongside the Roman legions or some kind of an auxiliary. So we don't really understand much about this helmet, but up until really recent years, it was the only evidence to back up Julius Caesar's actual Roman invasion of Britain. But what we do find in more recent years is coming from about 2017. So what we got, the other image there in 2017 is actually an image of the excavation trench or a ditch in 2017 at a site at Ebbsfleet. And Ebbsfleet is the place where some argue the first proper Roman invasion occurred in 55 BC. Actually, that's the evidence that Ebbsfleet might actually be from the invasion of 54 BC, or is the evidence from both invasions, but evidence of a substantial ditch there. And it's a report in 2017, excavated by the University of Leicester, sort of intimated and found in 2010. It's about a kilometre inland, probably less, sort of close to Pegwell Bay, and it's believed to have been a Roman fortress that held thousands of Roman legionaries. And what they've done, they found pottery, bits of Roman military equipment and all the rest of it associated with it. So that fort itself is the first fort that has been found relating to Julius Caesar's invasion. You could argue that Julius Caesar could have actually made up the whole story, because all we had was this word. And if the documents of Julius Caesar hadn't survived, then we wouldn't have known the Romans ever come over here in 55, 54 BC in the first place. So the other bit I wanted to do, really, this was actually a 2-hour lecture, but because of time constraints, because I'm preparing a new lecture this week, I just want to tell you a little bit more. Julius Caesar, if any of you study Julius Caesar, born the 12th of July and 100 years BC, and you get the Ides of March, of 15th of March, 44 BC, when Julius Caesar was actually assassinated. And a few interesting key facts is that the invasion of 56 BC of Britain was actually cancelled. It may have gone ahead, but wasn't successful, so he didn't really write about it. Then you've got the invasion of 55, which was a bit of a disaster. But he sort of, a few sort of natives were killed and a few chariots and stuff were involved. And 54 BC was a little bit more successful. But again, looking for the archaeologists, this is an archaeology class. So, but we got the invasion of 54 BC, which was more successful. And sort of paraphrasing this, 54 BC, Julius Caesar is said to have received the tribute of 10 tribal kings in Britain, and that tribute or subservience from 10 tribal kings, including the King of Orkney, strange, this is Kent now, Ramsgate, so it's a long way to go. They basically said, we proclaim you as our leader, therefore you are now king of, or leader of Britain, and therefore with their surrender, or whatever word you want to use, Julius Caesar is said then to have conquered Britain, 54 BC, with the loss of very few lives on either side. So he marched back to Rome and he said he conquered Britain, and that was it. But he never really conquered Britain at all. He didn't really get further than, say, London. So I think the last point to make is that, you know, we talk about Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul. We talk about Vercingetorix and Elise. Vercingetorix defeat in 52 BC. We're talking about the legendary Vercingetorix throws himself down at the feet of Julius Caesar and surrenders. We hear about Elise, where Vercingetorix sent the women out to in the sanctuary of the Romans to be looked after the Romans. The Romans didn't look after them, and therefore they all starved to death. All these wonderful stories, terrible stories. We never really found where the Fortress of Elise actually is. Then again, some people do the usual thing. It's written about by Julius Caesar. So I think the last thing I really want to say is that other than the civil wars, Pompey, Mark Antony, and the affair with Cleopatra, got Cleopatra pregnant, and she fell pregnant with the future leader of Egypt, Ptolemy. Anyway, moving on. And then what we then got, the final thing, I think that actually you could go on ever talking about Julius Caesar. Eto Brute and you, Brutus. I think everyone knows about the assassination, the Ides of March, 15th of March, 54 BC. But I think there's one interesting point with this. Brutus wasn't the first one to stab Julius Caesar. It was Casca. Casca stabbed him in the neck and then and held Julius Caesar, or somewhere around there, called for help from his brothers, and Brutus went up and then sort of stabbed Julius Caesar in the chest, at which point the famous "Et tu, Brute," you too, child, not you too, Brutus, all those different things are said to have said. I think, here we go, it's said, Eutropius, the Roman writer, writes about the assassination. Around 60 men participated in the assassination. He was stabbed 23 times. Right, okay. So 60 people are said to have stabbed him but he was only stabbed 23 times. Line up those who you've actually stabbed me. So you get sort of interesting things. But really, that's the history. So sorry for the short video today, but hopefully it's been of some use. Thank you very much. And next week, the wonderful subject of Saint Bees is this week's topic in the pandemic clampdown, and hopefully my students enjoy what we're doing, and those members of the public who are out there subscribe, and if you do want to register for my classes, take part in our live classes, and sort of interact with my other students, we're charging for 10, we're charging for 8 sessions, and notes sent to you in the post, and loads of other things. It's not just the online thing. That's £48 for the 8 classes. Let me know, put a message on my box there at the end of this video, and you can take part. Thank you very much. KARL-JAMES, LANGFORD, Archaeology, Canterbury. Let's beat the pandemic. Thank you.